Jim, will you say you're meeting at the moment?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. Okay, let's call this select board meeting to order at 4:35. This is part 2 of a data gathering session where we at 3 we visited the property of Dave Cowdery at 559, and we will have a session where we have a dialogue now on the request. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? And assuming that public comments would be what we're here for. What I'd like to do first is back up and share what I understand is just the short history of how we arrived to where we are today. In the fall of 2021, the town received an application for salvage yard certification of approved location. That last part is known as COL, C-O-A-L, for the property owned by Dave. The town sent out a notice to abutters. There was a site visit. The town created a document, a COL document with certain stipulations, and approved it. But before it went to the state, the request was withdrawn by the owner. Also in 2021, the Secretary of the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, the Environmental Division Salvage Yard Program, brought a suit against Dave to Superior Court. In May of 2023, a court hearing was held, and the judge ruled that both sides would meet to resolve issues. This resulted in a stipulated judgment order, which details items like reducing the number of vehicles, and also gave Dave Cowdery an option to apply for a new COL with the town of Hartland. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, this is a 2-step process as we understand it. The town would decide to or to not proceed with their part of the COL process. Should the town approve it, then the state group that I just mentioned, the Environmental Division, would make a final judgment call on the permit. So I believe that's the background with how we got here today, with the new application that was made in June.
We just shrunk everything down this time.
I'm sorry?
We just shrunk the size of the salvage yard down this time.
Well, I didn't say anything about the size, or you're saying that's what the stipulation.
First time we took in the whole building, remember, everything like that.
Oh, I see.
Since then, we got the used car.
Yeah.
So we got a used car dealership.
Right. Yeah. If we decide to go forward with a new COL, that would be considered that there are multiple businesses, and what we're talking about is the salvage yard portion of those businesses, and essentially
It's not a real salvage yard. It's going to be a storage space, basically.
It is the salvage yard certificate that's being applied for.
Right, but we're not going to operate it like a salvage yard, because we never ran it operate like a salvage yard. We're
Okay.
not going to start coming in and stripping stuff and tearing cars all apart and stuff like that. They're just going to be parked there until we get to fix them.
Okay. And again, we as a board are not here nor to argue the state statutes. We really are, like you know, reading them and being guided by what we read on our part. We don't have any land abutters here today, so I think I'll open up the, Jim, are you seeing any hands raised at all? Or?
No, there's.
Okay.
I was there long before they were, that's why they're not here.
Yeah, okay.
Been there for 80 years, started the business in 1964.
Okay. Alan and Dave, do you want to make any comments? And then there may be questions from my colleagues that we could start with you guys. Just,
What's that now?
do you have any comments of that? The stipulated judgment gave you a choice of eliminating all of those. I don't want to. The junk cars from the environment, or to apply for the permit.
We had one major problem that day. In court, the judge said he was going to come to my property. Okay, so I went to court, depending on that to happen. Then he changed his mind, never came.
Well, as I understand it, his order, as I read the document from the court, is that he instructed you and the legal team from the Department of Environmental Conservation to sit down and work out what are not options for you. It sounded to me like the judge was being very generous and giving you the opportunity to wrestle with those.
The major problem is nobody will step up to describe the used cars from the salvage yard. Nobody's man enough to stand up and say, what's what. We got the used car license. They said if it was a VIN number, it was a car. I could take any car out there and take the VIN number down and make out a registration, send it to Montpelier, they'd send me back number plates. So a used car dealer license is the same thing. All the cars fall under your dealer license.
Okay. Again, Dave, I wish I had great knowledge here, but I don't. So what we can only talk about is actually the salvage yard. Yeah. Okay.
And it's not like we're growing, we're shrinking.
Yeah. The stipulation does require you to reduce the number of cars on the property.
Right.
We're not in a position to go count those cars, but how would you say you're doing in that regard?
Yeah, but when they do the cars, they say there's 100 cars when there's not only 60.
So whether there's 60 cars or 160 cars, are you reducing the number? And they have they have quotas per month in the stipulation, and they want receipts or something
Yeah,
like
we're
that.
doing that.
You're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cars have left, loads of tires have left, loads of junk have left.
Okay.
They've been emailed copies of the slips.
Right.
Then she writes back, she don't want the copies of the slip for that stuff. Well, when they came there and pointed it all out, they wanted it moved.
Yeah.
So that's what we're getting.
Yeah, I just going by what I read in the stipulation,
Yeah,
which
right.
I'm glad you got the slips and keep the slips. Who knows next time on that part.
Yeah, we take pictures of the slips and send them right to them.
Yeah. When I look at the agreement that the select board back in 2021 had created, there was language in there for the fence for reducing the number of cars, just
Which
like,
we have. I mean, from the time you was up there before, there's a lot less cars.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I sold 7 classic Volkswagen pickups for pretty or nothing. A lot of classic stuff I sold for pretty or nothing. That
Yeah.
was really a shame.
Yeah, I'm sure there's things you have that, there's markets out there for them. It's
Oh,
just
it's
a matter
sad if you
of,
pay $3,000 for something, somebody stands there and tells you it's junk.
yeah,
And one dealer sells it to another dealer. But it wasn't junk till we ended up at my place.
yeah.
I
Okay,
had time to work on it because if you look at those pictures when it started, it was up in the woods. I had to cut the trees. I got piles of brush. I burnt quite a few. I haven't burned any for a while. When you cut down the tree, you gotta cut it up and remove the brush because you don't want to burn the brush by the car. You'll have them all on fire.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and then I had RJ Cross Road from one Stump Allen area. Well, right up just beyond where we were walking, where the line would be going over that salvage yard, that green area there. That was all stumps, so I got that, so it's usable now,
okay,
you know, because, you know, moving stuff, I gotta move stuff up there and, you know, do what I gotta do down there.
right,
Don't forget, we had COVID immediately after this all started.
COVID didn't affect us, only affected.
COVID.
Well, it affected us as far as traveling and going places.
But not in their opinion, only the state was affected.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have one question, and then please, fire away. It's not relevant to what we're doing, but are there 3 businesses now that you would,
They're all his business. I'm gonna have the salvage yard. He has the used car lot.
okay, and the garage,
He runs that.
that's under your name now? Okay, great. Okay.
Body shop, mechanic shop, inspection station.
It's all one business.
Yeah, okay, Mandy,
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to go to the site visit. I was at work, so
What's that?
I wasn't able to go to the site visit, so I apologize. How many cars are up there currently?
About 60.
There's 60 cars now,
Yeah.
and is that for both businesses?
No, that's his.
That's his. Okay, not the salvage yard.
No, there'll be 10 or 15 cars in this salvage yard spot.
So between both, there's about 75?
No,
All the other business,
no.
60. I mean, cars are coming in and going out. I mean, there's customers' cars. I've got a number of cars registered. Do you want to know how many are unregistered? How many total vehicles? What specifically do you want to know?
How many vehicles are there right now?
Are sitting on the property?
Total, correct.
Customers,
I
cars
didn't
and
count today. I
everything.
mean, they asked me today how many customers' cars were there to be worked on. Right now, I have 5.
Mhm.
So. You can,
So I'm reading the statute, just so it's clear. A junk motor vehicle means a discarded, dismantled, wrecked, scrapped, or ruined motor vehicle or parts thereof. An unregistered motor home not connected to water or sewer, or a vehicle other than on-premise utility vehicles. And it says that they have to be registered within 90 days. So one of the things that I'm struggling with this is your definition of what junk or salvage is vis-a-vis what's used for sale. And what you think it is versus what the law says it is, we're not even close. So to me, one of the things we need to agree to is that definition, because we're going to be back and having problems.
Well, from what I understand, if you're working on a car, you can bring in your shop, work on it, you can move it back out, move on to another one and do the same thing.
Sure, that car is registered,
No, well, yeah, it's registered to the dealer.
but it's saying here for unregistered for a period of 90 days. We were just walking around up there this afternoon. You have a lot of cars up there that are not registered for more than 90 days. They would be considered salvage. And I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm just reading what the law says. And that would be the stipulation if we were to do this. That you gotta follow that.
How many vehicles can I have as a licensed used car?
No, this is a salvage. You're looking for a salvage yard application. A used car application is not what we're talking about today.
Okay, well.
Because we're not prepared to talk about that. I have no idea.
If it's a salvage car, we're not worried about registering.
That's right. But you have cars in the front that you say are used for sale,
Yeah,
that by law is salvage.
how do you consider them salvage?
Because I went and looked at them, they're buried in the ground. They're about 4 inches into the dirt. They've been sitting there more than 90 days, sir.
All you gotta do is go start them up, and move them now.
Or they go with site.
Or
plans.
register them.
Yeah, registered under the dealership.
What vehicle? You
I
might,
think, Alan, I could, I'd go up there. I mean, if personally, you know what I would do is we'll go up there and we'll put paint on whatever one of them we think is. But I think the concern I have is what you think is used and what we think and the state thinks is used probably is different. And if we can somehow come to an agreement of what that is, it's gonna go a long way with us helping them. But if we can't come to agreement, it's gonna be difficult for us.
are you sure it's sunk in the ground or was it just a deflated tire?
I think you can agree, some of those cars been up there in the front lawn for more than 90 days. Unregistered.
Yes.
That's all, that's all. And so the law says you got 90 days to register.
So,
So why would anybody get a used car license then?
You have to tell us that. We don't know anything about the used cars. You guys
well,
have.
he's got the law.
I'm not talking, but I'm reading the law under junk cars. I'm not reading about used cars.
If you sell
But
them,
there's kind of an overlap there somewhere.
You're making this really complicated, and that's what Phil was alluding to, is you got multiple businesses up there. And so we're only looking at one aspect of your businesses, which is the salvage. And that's the area where you're having problems with the state. And we're trying to figure out how we can, as a taxpayer in town, how can we try to sort this out?
the state came in and said there's 10 cars there that were saleable.
And then if there were 10 cars there, but there were more cars around
And a
there.
500 SL Mercedes convertible that sold for $91,000 sat there not registered was considered junk, just because I let the plates run out.
So where would that wind up?
That black Suburban sat there was junk, that Dodge pickup.
Well, let's stay with that Mercedes. If where Tom is going, if we understand and we want to move forward together, you are part of the town and we're part of the town, then what I believe we're saying is that Mercedes would need to go on the salvage yard side of the fence.
No, it isn't, because it's all inspected and registered to the used car business. I put a dealer plate on it, got it right down here.
It has no front end to it.
No, wrong Mercedes.
Not that one.
Okay,
Black one
No,
out,
he's talking about his black 500,
black one out.
not the silver.
okay, well, let's talk about the one that's in the yard right now.
Yeah, that one would have to go into the salvage area.
I gotta put the headlights in, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, thank you for straightening that out. I wasn't.
But he's got a perfectly drivable black one that they said.
I've seen you drive that, that's not, I was talking about the SL or whatever that model is. Okay. So are you comfortable with that, Dave, that falls underneath the classification of, for now, it's a junk salvageable car that needs to go into the salvage area, should you repair it, then it can come out for sale.
Well, once we find out what we're gonna have with space and know what we got for space to use, and in the meantime, we're still moving cars out.
But what he's wanting to make sure is that vehicles that look like that one, that are
Yeah,
disassembled, will be in the salvage,
yeah, they'll
the
be parked,
designated salvage area.
they'll be parked in that salvage area.
Okay. Okay,
But the
that's
front-
good.
The front row of cars there aren't gonna be, those, put a battery in them, we're not gonna buy new batteries all the time, because they don't last if you don't drive all the time.
Again,
This is where yeah, where it bothers me with, because you say, oh, but I just gotta put, so I couldn't go there and start the car. Like if I go to Tony's Used Auto, I go down there, if I want to get a car, I go inside, down on Route 5.
Right,
They'll give me a key, I go, I start the car, I can drive it on the lot.
go right
Every
out.
single car down there?
We'll just say in the front there, right in the front row. Like, I'm trying to make a point. It's not that, let me get a battery, let me do this, let me do that. They're ready for sale. They still need work. And so what we're suggesting is, if it still needs work and it's not ready for sale, it stays in the salvage part. Once you got it and it's ready to go, then you put it in the front.
Okay, Tony doesn't have a salvage license, so you're gonna take the key,
I'm getting back to your use, I'm trying to get you to,
you're gonna take the key, go right out and start them cars up in back of Tony's fence and run around under those trees, right?
no, I'm talking about in the front of his yard
In the
where
front.
you want to have your used car sales. Trying to make a distinction.
Alan, you were taking exception with that. Were you, or was I misreading you?
A vehicle for sale, used car, is not a brand new.
Not-
vehicle.
not
So
saying
You
that.
don't have to go out there, and it doesn't have to be turnkey, ready to drive off the lot.
Then how
It
do
can be within reason, that person says, I have interest in that, give a deposit, and then you bring it in, you get the new battery in it, you check the brakes.
so
Lots of
how do
used car dealers
we,
do that.
I'm not disagreeing. Then Alan, how do we differentiate between used car and salvage? What's the line?
That's where we're waiting for somebody for the.
I would say something that is dismantled.
It's in the statute.
Or,
Dismantled is in the statute.
or rusted out.
These cars sitting there aren't rust buckets, they were bought out of Connecticut because they weren't rusty.
Um, Back to the Mercedes as an example. Are we, as a definition of a car that would go into the salvage section of the businesses, are we in agreement that fits? That it's.
The salvage is a better term to use with him instead of junk. But, yeah, it's salvage, I mean, that's a term that gets stamped on the titles, it's salvage.
And
But
technically,
salvage is something where you can go in, or you can register it, and you have a salvage title.
Right.
the agreement says salvage. Okay, yes.
So what,
And there would be junk vehicles in with the salvage vehicles also. But the ones that are really junk, there are older vehicles there, like older Chevy truck stuff, that we want to hold on, because, they've already lasted 30 years. They'll outlast a lot of the cars you're driving.
But those would be
Those would be in the area.
in the salvage area, right? Right. Yeah, I think what Tom brought up is if you technically read that statute, it's basically saying, throws in this 90-day period. And that's part of the confusion that we're seeing right now. The car sits in the same place for 90 days, um, what category does that fit into within your business?
I'll ask a question. The cars that are in the front now, in the used lot, do those cars generally have salvage titles?
Most of them do.
So by definition, doesn't that, if it's a salvage title, isn't a salvage car until it's ready to be sold?
There's salvage vehicles registered and being driven on the road, registered and inspected and insured.
But those cars would have cleared titles, wouldn't
The only
No, they have a
reason-
salvage.
They have a salvage title.
The only reason they're
If
salvage,
they even issue a title on it anymore.
the only reason they're salvage is the insurance company wants to write them off. Like down in Connecticut, where we used to go down and buy them, I haven't bought a car since 2017, because they asked me not to buy any more cars. But anything that goes through the insurance company is salvage, and they sell 600 to 800 cars a day down there. You know, and they have 150 salvage yards all over the world, even in Russia. Copart, auto parts.
You can only put liability insurance on. So you can't ever collect.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
The biggest question now is how ridiculous high the fence has got to be. And what the fence has to be.
Yeah, I think we would have to, as a board, we would have to,
You gotta take into consider the height of the cars. It's not gonna be like a excavator operating cars up in the air and all that stuff.
yeah, I think that's all work that we would have to do to figure and give that to you. Yeah, and there's a lot of homework here. You know, the number of vehicles, you know, what do we write in here that complements the fact that you are moving vehicles out and continuing your cleanup operation, to not interfere with anything what the state has already. sort of said.
If we get the salvage yard, as big as it is, we put all the salvage cars in there,
Mhm,
and then the other cars sell it and get this behind us, then we can start working on it.
mhm. Yeah, I think I understand the concept of where you're going. That, you know, if you want, potentially, as I am thinking, there may be cars that you acquire that you put into the salvage yard. When the time is right, you start working on them to move them out as for sale.
I bought them as a retirement plan, something I could tinker on, you know, I'm 80 years old. I could tinker on, sell a car once in a while, have a little spending money.
Mhm,
You know, it's like somebody invested in the stock market or something like that, you know, I've been in the car business all my life, so that's what I did.
Right,
You know, when they were cheap, I bought them.
sure, and you're good at it. There's no question about it. You've been successful. And you're a business person in town, and
But
Yeah.
once I started this, see, I had a whole lot of junk up in the woods. It really wasn't mine. I had a wrecker business, towing cars in, and I got to fix cars. He got to keep cars there, sitting there, put storage on them.
right,
So when he went out of business, he didn't get them cleaned up. So I was stuck with them. I didn't own them, but they were sitting there.
right,
So after a few years, I just got rid of it.
okay,
So that was my first thing, is go up and cut all the trees, get them out of the trees. If you look at the pictures, you can see they're all shrunk down into a smaller area
mhm,
and still shrinking. And that's the plan.
okay. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I
I
appreciate.
have a couple of questions. So
Well, you have a location for your used car sales, and there would be a location, a fenced-in area for your salvage yard. What about vehicles and other things that are not in either one of those locations? Will they then be removed from the property?
What vehicle,
Well,
what?
well, there's like the buses, some of the buses there's stuff behind the buses, there's stuff behind the building. What about that kind of stuff? That doesn't fit into the salvage yard.
Well, the stuff is what we've been
That's
cleaning
what
up.
we've been cleaning up. That's why,
The junk, hauling it to, the stuff that's not really like valuable metal. We've been taking over to Casella's transfer station, Lebanon, tires down to
Evergreen.
Evergreen, and then either Moorways or Hodgkins or any of the valuable metals. So any of the stuff that's been lying on the ground, we've been going along, picking that up, like you said, cut down some trees to get at the stuff. The discarded leftover pieces from auto body repairs, bumper covers and stuff like that. We've hauled, I think,
the reason,
2 trailer loads, 1 truck load. Bumper covers and just miscellaneous like plastic stuff over to the transfer station. I don't know how many of those tires went down to everything.
yeah, that ain't cheap, get rid of tires anymore.
And when do you think you'll be done doing that?
Well, one of the reasons,
Well, the weather's kind of changed things up.
I get it, but
one of the reasons all up through by the shop is such a mess is because we clean out, separate and stuff, because like you say, I put 30 tires in the pickup, take them over to Evergreen, and then taking small stuff, like the bumpers. The dump don't take bumpers, I didn't know that. But there was plastic recyclable. But Casella transfer station would take them. So I rented a dump trailer, chainsaw, cut the ends off the bumpers, packed them right in. So I got them up above the sidewall. Then I left them that way to pick up to hold them down in, put a chain up around them, filled the pickup bed up with them, took them over, cost me $187, I think, to get rid of them.
Just a housekeeping piece. I'm looking at the stipulated judgment order, item 3. The respondent, that you shall submit an application for a certificate of approved location, Nicole, to the town of Hartland. Have you provided a copy to the agency?
Not yet, because they ain't got nothing back from you guys.
Well, your application has to go to them at this point, if I understand item 3 correctly. It says then provide a copy of the application to the agency. So the application that you give us, you need to get a copy to them, it sounds like, to let them know that you're abiding by that.
She was notified that it had been submitted, but I don't know the copy was sent.
Yeah, I just want to,
cover your tail.
yeah.
Well, somebody's talked to her. Did you talk to her?
No, this is between you, that doesn't, we won't help. We can't help you on this. It's gotta,
You guys
you could
are-
just probably just email it to her, Alan.
Well, you've got it.
Well, you,
Can you take a picture of it?
Yeah, right here.
You can have it.
here, you can have it.
You can have it. Take my copy. I got it upstairs.
Okay.
So under,
That way you at least have a physical copy if you need it.
on the 3rd page, item 3 is what we're talking about. Okay.
The other thing, you had been working with previous select boards on an agreement. And how did that go? Were you never got signed or whatever. Did you agree with the stipulations of this agreement?
Well, that's when, Vincent told us we need to use car license. So we was trying to weigh the two, so then we chose to go with the used car license, is why we stopped pursuing.
So that's why you withdrew the
Right.
2021
So
one.
we're saying-
But he's asking, did you agree with what the
Do you
select board?
agree with these stipulations? We said, sure, here, if you sign this, we'll be in agreement. Do you agree with the stipulations
The
in
old
this
one?
agreement?
The old one?
The only one.
Well, the original, right?
I'm new on the board, so I don't know what old, new,
You
wanna
original.
look at the copy of
Here,
it?
here's another one. You can have this one too.
They had spoken about downsizing.
Correct.
So we've been downsizing. And the size of the area is downsized. So we're kind of jumped ahead in agreement with that.
So I-
But
I
this
would-
is, excuse me, this is quite specific as far as what it says, so. And I'm gonna make this motion after you leave it, we're gonna hand you this as a starting point. And have you mark it up. We're gonna give you 7 days to review this.
Okay.
Okay,
This is on what we talked about today, or?
no, this is from the past board.
On the original.
We just gave you a copy of it. I'm not suggesting this is what the board is gonna do, but we need a starting point here.
Okay, you gotta have the used car lot and the.
I'm talking about
No,
used
wait a minute,
cars.
Wait a minute, the used car lot and the salvage yard can't be together.
This is not, this is only the salvage
It's
yard.
only the salvage.
Yes, this is only the salvage.
Yeah, yeah.
But the salvage yard that we had measured before is the used car lot now.
No, okay.
Alan, you
So-
understand what I'm saying?
So,
Right, the stipulations on the salvage yard, the conditions on like recycling of fluids and stuff like that, which we're not, if you go down to Hodgkins, are you familiar with Hodgkins?
Absolutely. I work with them,
Okay,
trying to clean up their site.
so you know, they're not even on the list of the state for being a salvage yard, when you look it up
They're on the
online.
list of the state as being a brownfield site. They're a
Okay.
hazardous waste site.
They're not a salvage yard.
well,
Yeah, let's not go there. Anyways, let's take it out.
But,
So-
okay, you see what that place looks like.
Yes,
You see what we look like. There's a big difference.
absolutely. I'm
We're
not
not-
suggesting that. What I'm trying to do is figure out a starting point
Yeah, but
to come to an agreement if we can.
but I think a
And
point of order, right? Don't we need as a board to figure out what our current
Absolutely correct.
absolutely, but I'm just trying to say, it'll look
criteria may?
I'm not saying that they have, that this is gonna be the final diagram. What I'm trying to say is, this has some specificity in it.
Yeah.
And whether we accept that specificity
But what
or
we really
not.
have to do, I think, is come up with a new set of criteria and say,
Right.
here you go.
So far, everyone is correct.
Yeah.
This is
And-
going to
and-
be parking lot, basically.
Well, what I think we're asking is, we'd like to have a dialogue together as we go through this process. That's why we're here today. Tom is suggesting you take a look at the document that the board was all ready to approve and sign back in November of 2021. Things changed, but some of these items in here are not relevant because the size is larger. But look at it and just sort of say, that doesn't work, or yeah, that's okay. And that feedback will go into our work as we develop a new document that reflects current size, current features of what's, what's being reduced and not reduced. An example of how we talked today about cars that are in kind of a staging area would that might be considered salvage until they get that front bumper or whatever, they go behind the fence. Those kinds of things we can work out. But it feels like we're launching the process today, and just take a look at this and give us your feedback. Tom, I think has a sound judgment. We only have 30 days to get all this done, so 7 days, turn it around, and we'll be doing our homework in the meantime. Does that fit? with-
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I just want to articulate.
Quick question on 30 days. Is it 30 days from today or 30 days from the day of the application?
Today,
So that date of the hearing?
today.
Yes, thank you, Martin.
You're welcome.
Okay,
I'd also like to check out whether or not we can have a continuance. We don't close the hearing, we have a continuance. In zoning, the clock doesn't start to work.
yeah, so again, what we're saying with the continuance is, we want both sides have to feel comfortable with this. I mean, our job is to keep the town moving along, and, we don't want to be restrictive with business, but we do want to make sure that we're doing things correct according to state statutes. So do you have a copy of the, I have my copy here.
I guess, yeah. Oh, yes. No, we already gave him one of those.
Oh, no, we gave him
Other one?
we gave him the.
Reading them both?
the
Oh, no,
certificate.
you can have that, that's
I
fine.
gave him the call. So this was what the stipulations were last time. So please read those over. Obviously on the front page, the length and width is wrong, so just disregard that. But the second page is more of the stipulations that the board is looking to go into detail with, please.
And I want to make it really clear, we have not made a decision. So we just want to try to have a starting point.
Well, the fence height is pretty critical because, instead of gathering up steel pipes and stuff,
Yeah, and that's homework that we can do. And if you're talking to the state on this, you can ask questions about what is the appropriate fence.
So once you come up with a fence, then the state's gotta come up with a fence.
Well, we'll be looking to do whatever the state requires, and again, yeah, I think we're,
But the state is gonna wanna turn it into a real salvage yard. We don't want a real salvage yard.
Dave, I made that comment to you before. This is a two-part process, and, we're doing our best based on your request to do part one, and then you're on your own with the state.
I had a question about the document from the last time we did this that I read to you up in the yard about,
That was the town plan you were setting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that talked about commercial and being able to have some outside storage of materials. So say we have steel pipe and stuff like that, like he's talking about.
Or the snow plow or things like that, I think you
Right,
have
stuff
valid
that is
examples,
not a vehicle. I mean, if
Right.
it's leaning up against the back side of the building or something like
Right.
that, I mean,
Yeah.
is that an issue?
What was the phrase you used that the town plan was?
Yeah.
A
It's a
guide?
policy doc. I think what's important is just to recognize you're on Route 12 and that, shield stuff, that's all. Everybody has stuff. I mean, living in Vermont, we all have stuff. So we're not suggesting. Now, what we say and what the state say may be a little bit different, but no, I mean, obviously you need pipe. You may have to weld something. You have to,
Right.
but
Fabricate things.
fabricate, right,
There used to be a blacksmith shop there.
right. But
Some people knew how to do stuff. We don't.
But as we all know, when we drive by certain properties, you can tell people are just storing junk because they don't want to get rid of it, right? And that's not what we want to do. You have a business. Granted, it's a business.
We're an automotive business.
Right,
We're automotive people,
right.
We've got oil running through our veins.
When you drive through, you just see a few cars.
Yeah, so,
Till they start looking down in the sky.
so
Okay,
I
well,
think we should not close this public hearing, but have a continuance of the public hearing.
whatever is advisable for,
Well, and then if we're wrong, and then the 30-day clock ticks, but I think
okay,
you can have public hearings, but if you were still looking for more testimony, we can continue it.
okay, good.
I'm gonna.
But I'm not a
moving-
junkyard ordinance,
Excuse me, salvage.
salvage yard.
I'm probably gonna be moving some cars out of the area that we're talking about for a salvage yard to get in there and get it organized so I can get in the build a fence,
Great,
because in
okay,
that one row of cars, I got a pile of light poles under the weeds and stuff there that I gotta all move.
okay.
So there'll be some,
So in between, whenever we kind of get together, if there's any questions, please go to Martin. And he'll do his best to guide you through whatever, kind of information, additional information is needed. And I'm sure you have contacts at the state that you've been working with, but
And we'll make sure we move.
No one on our side.
that's,
We'll move some of them and say we got a lot of portions of parking in different spots.
okay. If you would please,
So I'd like to make a motion that we continue this public hearing until our next select board meeting, which is June 24th,
is there a second?
or July 24th,
July
I think
27th,
it's on that Thursday, yeah.
27th.
July 27th.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes.
One thing that's hindered us doing stuff, we had to get cameras because we've got a lot of converted these. We had to get our street light updated, we've been doing a lot, that's, and
Okay, thank you both. And we'll be working together. Okay,
Do we need to adjourn or is the continuance?
Yeah, we can just say we've adjourned at this point. Yeah.
How's that?
Thank you.
I'll cross the T and dot the I.
yeah.